All right, everyone, welcome to our first training module of the basketball season, Making a Dead Ball Live. We're going to focus here primarily on our 3 restarts, and we're also going to take a look at the mechanics for those for both 2- and 3-person officiating crews. So, here we go. Again, our outline is pretty straightforward. Our focuses are going to be on our 3 restarts, the jump ball, the throw-in, and the free throw, and again, we're talking about both 2 officials and 3 official crews. So let's first focus on 2-person crews. We have listed as referee and umpire. Remember, the referee can designate which official will toss, but we're going to refer to the tossing official as a referee and the non-tossing official as the umpire for the purposes of our discussion here. Remember that the referee has a primary responsibility for the jumpers. They'll blow the whistle after indicating which direction the teams will go and step into the circle for the toss. Once possession is gained, we're going to make sure that the arrow is set correctly, and then they will become either the lead or the trail based upon where the umpire goes. The umpire, once the referee blows the whistle, puts the hand up to be ready to chop the clock as soon as the ball is legally touched by either of the jumpers. They have primary responsibility for the non-jumpers, and then the umpire will move in the direction of the ball. Usually this will be going to lead. I wouldn't move to trail a lot, but we'll talk about some situations in which you might. So here's our first example. The front court for our purposes will be to the left. So the direction of play for both of our two-person examples will be to the left. So here, the referee will blow the whistle. The ball is touched. As soon as we have it touched, the umpire chops the clock in. The ball goes to the left. The umpire moves with the direction of play and heads down to the lead. The referee waits for players to clear and then backs out to trail. As I mentioned up top, it is rare but occasional that the umpire will need to go back to trail. For these plays, we're talking about the ball. In this case, remember, our front court is to the left. The ball goes way deep to the right into the backcourt, and probably we would also need some defensive pressure here for the umpire to go back and pick up the count. In this case, the referee is going to have to wait for players to clear, but not quite as long, because he or she's going to need to bust it down to lead to be in position to accept the play. But here is an example where the umpire would go to trail instead of lead, and the referee would end up in lead instead of trail. So now let's talk about 3-person jump ball mechanics. Again, the referee could designate the tosser, but we're always going to refer to the tossing official in these diagrams as the referee. So the referee still has primary for the jumpers after they blow the whistle and step in to throw the toss up and indicate who's going which direction. Again, they will always check the arrow once possession is gained, but in 3-person, the referee will always become trail. Umpire 1 is the official on the table side. They are responsible primarily for chopping the clock and making sure that the toss is legal. If it's a bad toss, umpire 1 is primary to blow it back, but anybody could blow it back. And then umpire 1 is either going to move to lead or center, depending upon the direction of play and which way the ball goes. Umpire 2 is the umpire opposite the table. The umpire 2 has responsibility primarily for all of the 8 non-jumpers, and just like umpire 1, will move to either lead or center depending upon the direction of the ball. So here we have an example where the ball goes to the right. If the ball goes to the right, then the umpire number 2 will become the new lead. Umpire number 1 will become center. The referee will wait for players to clear, check the arrow, all that stuff, and then come to trail on the opposite side. Because remember, we want lead and trail on the same side of the floor in a 3-person system. If, however, the ball goes to the left, now umpire 1 moves to lead, umpire 2 will go to center, and again, the referee will wait for players to clear and then go to trail, but this time trail will be table side trail on the same side of the floor as umpire 1. Now let's shift our focus a little bit to throw-ins, and specifically the location of throw-ins. We want the ball to be thrown in from the closest spot out of bounds to the spot of any foul or violation inbounds, with the exception being we will never administer a throw-in initially directly under the basket. Sometimes teams who can run the baseline will throw the ball in from under the basket, but we're never going to give them the ball between the lane lines. So here I'm going to throw up a shaded area. Anytime a foul or violation occurs inside that shaded area, including the half circle at the top of the key, the subsequent throw-in should come at the baseline. Anytime it's not within that shaded area, the throw in be at the nearest spot on the sideline. Some general mechanical reminders for throw-ins. Remember, we always want to keep the thrower in between you and his or her basket. The only exception to that is if the lead is administering a throw-in on the baseline outside the three-point line. The lead should always be inside the thrower in and hand outside. Also, we're always going to bounce the ball to the thrower in if we are the trail or if we're the lead administering a throw-in on the sideline. But if we're the lead administering a throw-in on the baseline, we will hand the ball to the thrower in if we're staying in the front court. Also remember that the trail will administer all throw-ins in the backcourt, and that could cause a switch depending upon where the throw-in spot is and where the other officials were. So we're first going to take a look at two-person. Remember, to start the half, whether the referee tossed or not, the referee is going to administer that throw-in. The umpire is going to go down and become the lead official on the table side. As far as sideline responsibilities are concerned, we'll start first with the lead, highlighting the lead here in orange. The lead is going to be responsible for the baseline as well as the sideline on their side of the floor. The trail, however, we're highlighting blue, is going to be responsible for their sideline as well as the division line and the baseline at the other end of the floor, which is not seen on the diagram. So that's the official that should be making the call if the ball were to go out of bounds on that sideline. That'll also dictate a little bit who's going to be responsible for a throw-in. All right, I've kind of minimized animation to make this easy for me, but I think the point still comes across here. So we're going to take a look at this throw-in. Obviously, the trail has already bounced the ball to the red player. The player throws the ball in, it's deflected by white and goes out of bounds on trail sideline. The only thing that's going to happen here is the trail is going to slide down and administer that throw-in at the new throw-in spot. No other changes here. On this play, the red player's throw-in is deflected by a white player and goes out of bounds on the baseline. This will require the officials to switch. The lead is going to come across the lane to administer the throw-in, noticing that the lead is going to keep the players between themselves and the basket they're trying to score in. The trail is going to go across the floor to balance the floor, lead and trail on opposite sides of the floor. On this play, again, throw in from the same spot. The ball's deflected and goes out of bounds on the lead sideline. And when it goes out of bounds on the lead sideline, knowing whether it's above or below the foul line extended is really going to dictate whether we have a position change or not. In this case, it does not do that. So the lead's going to slide out, tell that player to hold their spot and bounce the ball to them and administer the throw in from that spot. The trail's just going to come out into the normal position on the court. On this play, however, when the ball goes out of bounds on the lead sideline above the free throw line extended, now we're going to have a position change. Old lead's going to come out and become new trail because the ball is out on their sideline and administer the throw in. And then old trail is going to come down and become new lead. Again, we've balanced the floor and we have had to switch positions. Here's an example of a full court throw-in. Remember I said earlier that the trail will administer all throw-ins in the backcourt. So on this play, the ball's deflected out of bounds and we're still going in the same direction, but the trail's going to have to go all the way across the floor to administer that new throw-in, which means that the lead is going to have to cross the lane to balance the floor. So now let's shift into three-person mechanics, and we'll talk about starting the half here. Again, whether the referee tossed the ball or not, they will be administering this throw-in to start the half. They will become the trail. And then the other two umpires will fill in at either lead or center, remembering that lead and trail are on the same side of the floor and center is on the opposite side. Our sideline responsibilities are obviously a little different in three-person than in two-person. Again, the lead is being highlighted in orange, and their primary and only line responsibility is the baseline that they are standing on. The center, who I'm highlighting in green, is going to be responsible for their sideline. The trail is the only official now with multiple lines. The trail, who's highlighted in blue, is responsible for the near sideline, the baseline at the other end of the floor, which is not on the diagram, and the division line. So now we'll take a look at some basic half-court throw-in sets for three-person. Here again, lead and trail on ball side. They want ball side and strong side to balance out, center on the weak side by themselves. We have a deflection again by white that goes out of bounds on the trail sideline. The only thing that's going to happen here is the trail is going to go down to administer that throw-in. Again, it's a good idea to bounce here. I'd tell that that player is going to throw the ball in to hold that spot, and I'm going to back away and bounce the ball and administer the throw in as necessary. Here we have a ball that's deflected and goes out of bounds on the other side of the floor, still staying in the front court. Easy change here. Center becomes new trail to administer the throw in. The lead has to cross the floor to go to ball side and make ball side strong side. And then old trail now becomes center on the weak side of the floor. Important to note that if that ball had gone out of bounds on the baseline, but on center side of the lane, the lead would cross and we would have a similar switch. And here's an example of the type of play I just mentioned. We have a throw-in that goes out of bounds on the baseline, but across the floor and across the lane from the spot of the initial throw-in. So lead will cross the floor to administer the new throw-in, pushing old center to new trail, and then old trail slides down and becomes new center to balance the floor. And here's an example of a full court throw-in set. Here the ball is deflected and goes out of bounds across the floor. Remember, trail administers all throw-ins in the backcourt, so the trail is going to cross the floor. That pushes old center to new lead to balance the floor, and also causes old lead to become new center. As long as that ball had not been in the front court, we're going to make sure that we just push across as trail, and then everybody else can make that adjustment in their positions. Let's talk about some basic free throw reminders that are always true in all cases. The trail is always going to be table side, and they're always going to have responsibility for any substitutes coming in and going out of the game. As a lead official, I'm always going to step into the lane before each free throw to make sure everybody knows the number of shots remaining, and then I'm going to bounce the ball to the shooter and back out to my regular position. Also, and this is relatively new change, so I wanted to bring it up here, all players that are in marked lane spaces may enter the lane as soon as the shooter releases the ball on the attempt. But remember that the players who are not in a marked lane space, which includes the shooter by definition is not in a marked lane space, they're not permitted to enter the lane until the ball touches either the backboard or the ring. So let's talk a little bit about the mechanics of this, first from two-person. So the lead is going to step in and let everybody know 2 shots, or whatever the situation is, and bounce the ball to the free thrower. Then the lead's going to back out to their normal position. The lead has responsibility for the violations by any players on opposite lane spaces, as well as the player closest to them on their side of the lane. Notice also that the lead is opposite the table for free throws in two-person mechanics. The trail is going to be responsible for the other 2 players on the opposite side of the lane, as well as the shooter. The trail additionally has responsibility for the players not in marked lane spaces, and the trail would be the one that would chop the clock if the last attempt were unsuccessful as soon as it was touched by a player. And so here's a look at the 3-person version of free throws and their mechanics. The lead, again, same deal, steps in, 2 shots, or whatever the situation is, and then backs out to their position after they bounce the ball to the shooter. The lead, again, is responsible for the 3 players across the lane from their position, as well as the player closest to them on their side of the lane. But now the center is the one here who's going to be responsible for those 2 players on the opposite side of the lane, not in the lowest space, as well as the shooter. The center is also going to be responsible for chopping the clock in when the last attempt is missed and touched by a player on the court. The trail is going to be responsible for assisting anybody for any missed violations, as well as observing action by the players not in marked lane spaces. I hope you enjoyed this first module. I hope you got something out of it as you move into the rest of the season. I hope everybody has a great time and keep up the good work.